Hey, it's Justin Goff from Copy Accelerator, and I'm here today with Krista Edsel. She is a Copy Accelerator Lite member, and we're going to talk about how she went from being a former bartender, a former server, never making more than $4,000 a month, to now being on her way to landing six figures in copywriting gigs. She's had a really fast ascent. Only got into copywriting back in September of last year, so was that, I don't know, 7 months at this point. So very, very quickly has kind of turned things around for herself, which is why I wanted to bring her on. So first question for you, Krista. Most people do not get into copywriting. Nobody grows up when they're 6 years old and says, I want to be a direct response copywriter. There's always some random story of how you fell into this business. I'm curious, what led you down the path to getting into copywriting?
Yeah, so I didn't even know what copywriting was in like August of last year. Like you said, I've been a server and bartender for the last decade. I have a degree in youth counseling. I did that for about 3 years and kind of burnt out on that pretty quickly. Still love serving on the side, but I met Brooks Briz actually at my dog park here in Atlantic Beach, Florida. And I'm a big Brian Regan fan. He's a comedian, and he has this sketch about people sitting in first class on the airplane and being like, I'm making money right now. And I felt like that was Brooks at my dog park, because he was sitting there and I was like, you're doing something. And Brooks isn't a copywriter, but he did kind of intro me. He was like, you could totally do this. But here's what I'm going to tell you. He said, you need to have some skin in the game. So he suggested that I buy RMBC, which is Stefan's course, which was my first jump in. I had Googled copywriting when he mentioned it. I had looked in, and there's millions of free resources and things that you can get into, but it's overwhelming to try and figure out where you're going to go. So I bought RMBC in August of last year, and I put it on a credit card because that was about a quarter of my monthly income at the time. So that was a bit of a jump in. And my goal basically was, all right, well, I bought this. I have to at least make enough to pay this off, see if it works or not. In August, I probably did about 50 something proposals on Upwork. But I had no idea what I was doing. I was following RMBC, I was learning a lot, but my proposals were pretty rough. I wouldn't say that they were anything to brag about, for sure. And then I got to attend Copy Accelerator Live, the virtual, in September, because I hosted the beer happy hour, kind of snuck in the back door there. And I learned so much there. I wouldn't even say I learned a lot about copywriting, because I still didn't understand what it was in September. I was still learning what CTR and open rate and all of those terms meant. But I learned a lot about mindset. Dan Ferrari's talk on the big idea was huge. Craig Clemens showing up, just all these people I'd never heard of. Carlene Cole has been my hero since day one. Just hearing people's stories, and you're just like, all right, I can do this. If a surfer from Hawaii and all these people can do this, I got this. And so in September, I went to Copy Accelerator Live. I did have kind of an in with Brooks, so that helped, just with confidence mostly, I would say. Nobody's going to do the work for you, but getting into the network is very helpful. And yeah, between RMBC and Copy Accelerator Live, I started getting small gigs, and it was one of those
Those were from Upwork?
No, they were all from Copy Accelerator.
Oh, okay.
I joined Copy Accelerator after Copy Accelerator Live, and I didn't get any of the gigs from Upwork. 50 something proposals. I was looking through it earlier today, through my proposals, and I was like, well, now I know why I didn't get any of those gigs. I joined Copy Accelerator Lite right after the event. And it's been, a rocket ship since then. It's really been insane. My first gig was with Scott Phillips. writing Facebook ads for Forex trading.
Okay.
And I then realized I never wanted to write for financial again, but I learned a lot. And
Good learning lesson.
very much so. And like, I have no regrets from doing that. It was definitely the first like big mindset jump, because he sent me money on PayPal and was like, all right, here's the money, now do the work. I'd barely read a Facebook ad, like let alone written a Facebook ad. I had no idea what Forex trading was, but yeah, I jumped right in. And in September, my income goal by June of this year was to hit 10K a month by June of this year. And that felt insane. And I hit 10K in November of last year in that month. And that was just the start. It was just having somebody that was like, all right, I may not believe that you already have the skills for this, but I believe you're gonna try it. You're gonna learn how to do it because I have faith in you.
So I got a question. You said you hit 10K. Were you still part-time kind of bartending, serving, and then writing copy as well, or did you jump full right into copy?
I quit my serving job Thanksgiving week of last year.
Okay.
So, I was honestly, I love serving. I love people. I love hearing people's stories. And I think that was part of what made me a great server, but it's also part of what makes me a great copywriter, is that story leads are working right now, and telling people stories is my jam. Like, I just love it. And so like reading forums and doing research is like, I wake up in the morning excited to do it. And so, and I mean, a big part of the market is like 50-plus-year-old females. So I talk to my mom more now than I have in a long time. And I love my mom, but talking to her about like, so how did getting out of bed feel today? Like, I mean, it works. It's a new way of hearing and listening to and communicating people's stories, which has been exciting. So yeah, no, I quit serving. I didn't think it was going to happen that fast. I was more than willing to do both at the same time. I'm used to 60, 70-hour weeks. That's just how I was raised. That's, you do the work and you pay your bills.
So I'm curious, we were having a little chat before we started recording about, we both kind of grew up in these middle class, blue collar kind of families. Did it feel awkward at all to you the first time you got paid for writing something as simple as copy compared to going and doing like real work at a job?
Yes. Very much so. I totally respect. I have a healthy dose of respect for people who work 9 to 5s, for people who work office jobs and just pay their bills, and that's what they do. But yeah, that's how I was raised, like a one income family. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. We were all homeschooled. It was just like, you work and work and work and work, and then hopefully eventually you retire. And like, there's just no room for anything else. Like, that's just how it is. And yeah, super, if not awkward, just like, I know everybody talks about imposter syndrome, but it really truly was like, why would you even though you're making the money, like the owners of the restaurant I was working for, they're making way more money than I am because of what I'm doing. So like,
right.
For copy, it's just very different because people just know. And part of it is like, you think, well, I'm investing in a skill, but to a certain point, I didn't feel like I had invested that much money in the skill. I mean, I work hard to do what I do, but it's definitely been a challenge to say the least. And everybody that I've talked to on all of our calls and all is like, well, you need to be charging more if you're getting those results. I'm like, charge more.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because it's such a big sticking point for copywriters. What are you charging now in comparison to, let's say, what you were back in September? Has that changed?
Yeah. So in September, through another Copy Accelerator member, I got my first opportunity to write a full-on sales letter, my first ever one. And I offered to do it for $1,000, and they paid me $2,000 because they were just like, we know the market. Like, I know you're charging this, but you should be charging this. So I got $2,000 for my first sales letter, and I did an upsell for them because I felt guilty. Did an upsell for them too. It is what it is. And then I had 2 opportunities to write for Copy Accelerator Lite opportunities for the Energy Greens letter and an advertorial for Credit Secrets. So those were $1,500 each. Amazing opportunities just because it was all very new to me. I just finished a VSL script. That's a VSL script, an upsell and a downsell, and that package together was $7,000, and that was shocking. When I sent it, I had so much anxiety when I sent that out. So basically, I've gone from thinking it was worth $1,000 to not easily, but decently confidently asking for $4,000 in the last 6 months. So, and that's all just.
And have you gotten more comfortable now with charging more? Or is it still kind of make you tighten up a little bit?
A little bit. I don't feel like I'm over promising anymore. I definitely felt at the beginning like, can I do it? Yes. But it was a lot to think to myself, well, I've never done this before, but I can probably figure it out. To now I'm like, I can figure it out. Like, I have all the resources in front of me. It's just a matter of using them. I would say advertorials, I've gone from $250 an advertorial to $750 an advertorial in the same amount of time. And emails, I've gone from about $50 an email to, I won't take below $100 an email. So most of them pay more than that, but I love writing emails. So it's not as much. It's not as much to ask me to do it for 100, but no, my rates have definitely, and that's all just community involvement and people just telling me, because on my own.
That's one of those things where having people around you that can see the blind spots that you're not able to see is really life-changing. Because you honestly, if you didn't have the people around you who could see how much you actually should be charging, you'd still be charging what you were charging in September for sure.
Exactly. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, and it's always interesting too, that the conversation of how to charge more, because it's a simple conversation from the outside. It's like, yeah, just increase your prices. But I know, having had this conversation with hundreds of copywriters and having experienced it myself coming up as a copywriter, the reality of it is it's like a 4-hour conversation about self-worth and how you value money, and like it gets pretty deep. There's a lot more to it than just raise your prices. But it's cool to see that.
And it's easy to say to some, like, if you said, hey, you should charge more, I'd be like, yeah, okay. But you get on a Zoom call with the client and you're like, I have it written down, don't take any less than this. And they're like, well, what about this? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's do it for that. When, like, obviously, if I was making $4,000 a month and I'm easily making at least double that, I don't need every client that I have a Zoom call with, but it's still, that anxiety of it is still there, where you're just like, well, I don't want to say no. That was definitely the biggest mistake I made. Probably December, January, February, was saying yes to too many things. I mean, I was killing it, but I was also killing myself. Like, working from 4 a.m. to 7 p.m. a day is just, it's not sustainable. No matter how great you feel about your bills and your bank account, like, it's just not sustainable. So that was the biggest part. Zoom calls.
One thing that stood out with what you said is, so getting to that spot where you're okay with saying, here's my rate, and being okay with them saying yes or no is a really kind of powerful position to be in, because a lot of people, when they're kind of coming up, it's what you said. It's just, I'll kind of take anything because I want the experience, I want the money, I want the stability, all that kind of stuff. But when you can kind of get to the point where it's like, here's my rate. If you want to work with me, great. If not, that's fine too. Once you get to that point, it really changes things, because clients love talking to people who have their shit kind of down in terms of how they work with clients and who are confident in their abilities. Like, they don't want you sitting there being like, oh, I don't know. Like they want to have trust in you. So when you're confident that like, yeah, this is what I charge and I'll have this to you in 6 weeks or I'll have this to you whenever, like clients love hearing that.
Yeah. And a lot of like, I've learned you don't want to promise like rewrite after rewrite, but I've learned that like win-win mentality. Like, here's what I'm charging and I'm confident I'm charging this because it's going to be a win. And I'm going to work with you until it's a win. Not that I'll rewrite the whole thing, but we'll tweak the headline, we'll tweak the lead, we'll figure this out because I want good results for my next client. I want a testimonial for my next client just as badly as you want it to win. I think that's been a big part of my confidence is that I'm like, even if the very first shot out of the gate isn't killer, like I know I can get it there again, because I have the community and the resources to do it. And so I think that's been the biggest part of the change in my confidence is things that haven't been a win right out of the gate, but getting them there. And so I tell my clients, I'm like, here's what I'm charging, but it's because I know you're going to make this much. There's no like question that it's going to do well. It's just a matter of how we get it there.
Right. And I mean, it's a good point for people listening. It's very rarely that you write something and right out of the gate, it's a home run. It happens once in a while. I've had it happen a couple times kind of in my career, but the reality is most offers, to get them to the point where they're converting and when they're scaling on cold traffic, it's kind of more or less like shaping and molding of it to get it there. It's testing new leads, it's testing prices, it's testing different hooks, emails, whatever it is. That's kind of more the reality of what happens. Like I said, sometimes you get lucky, nail it on the first try, and
Yeah.
that's a great feeling. And obviously, the better you get, the more often you kind of get to the winner quickly. But yeah, the reality is, as long as it doesn't just absolutely bomb right out of the gate, there's usually a good chance that you can fix it and get it there eventually. So I mean, that's a good lesson that you learn pretty quickly. Because I'm kind of thinking about my own self, and I mean, that took me like 10 years to realize. I used to think like you just put the offer out, wrote the upsells, and if it didn't work on your first test, you threw it away. Like it's just such a
and I mean, like, you know, you've said many, many times, like it has to be a hell yes offer. Like the offer is definitely the most important part, but framing the offer and all of that is also very important. And it's so easy to tweak just the smallest things to frame that offer in a completely different way. And you know, some of it's out of your control, but to the degree that it is, like, you just have to really push until you've done everything you can personally to make it a win-win. So
right. So one thing I want to touch on, most copywriters kind of in that first year, it's just like drinking from a fire hose and so much information, so much stuff you're learning, and that can be overwhelming. And then it can be really, really frustrating because there's just usually loss after loss. Like you're writing stuff, it doesn't work, and you're just like, what the hell am I doing? Should I even be doing this? Like, I'm curious, what type of stuff have you kind of struggled with in this first 7 to 8 months being a copywriter?
I would definitely say I've been blessed with the fact that I love writing. And so I've told people for years I want to go back to school for like editing or publishing. I miss deadlines, I miss writing papers. And now I'm like getting paid to do it. So for me, like there really hasn't been a ton of struggles in that sense. I will say applying for things, finding the difference between a pattern interrupt and like going off the wall, like being crazy was a big thing for me. And just not being wordy. I love creative writing, and copywriting is not creative writing. And I got some feedback from Stefan on that early on. You can tell a story, you can use adjectives, you can do all these things, but at the same time, every word has to have a purpose. And in creative writing, it doesn't. Like you want this like flowery, flourishing like story. And in copywriting, like you want everything to be a part of the process. That was hard. And I would just say learning that no client is ever attacking you personally. Like if they don't like your writing or if it doesn't work, it's not you. You have to really separate your writing as your business. And like every business is going to have ups and downs. And so when you take the criticism, you have to pump it into your business, not into like yourself, because I'd like to say I'm good at taking criticism, and I've definitely gotten better at it. But when taking criticism for your writing and your business is a very different thing from taking criticism on yourself. And nobody's attacking you. It's just, this isn't going to work for our demographic. This isn't going to work for our angle. This isn't going to work for this. It's about, the results. And so I would definitely say I worked with, I've written I want to say 30 something advertorials for a sheets company, like a bed sheets company. And I would say probably half of those are winners. The other half were definitely not. And I don't feel too bad about that. I feel pretty good about that.
That's
but
pretty
the
good.
ones that were not, I learned a lot from. I learned you can't just, write whatever you want and just assume. I learned about, having proof backing things. I learned about how to do problem or pain, agitate, solution, that there are certain things that just work. And until you learn the rules, you can't break them. Once you've learned them, you can try new things, but really as a newer copywriter, until you've learned the things that work, there's no need to go and figure out new things.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously something Stefan and I harp on all the time, is stop trying to reinvent the wheel and just model what's already working. It's the quickest way to putting something out that works. I want to actually swing back to what you were talking about before with the criticism of your copy, because I thought that was a really, really good point. And it's something every copywriter kind of battles with. You kind of got to have thick skin, because and it kind of depends on who's giving you feedback. Some people are much more gentle than others.
Very true.
Some people tear you apart, and some people tear you apart and kind of like a drill sergeant screaming in your face, telling you you're ugly and your mother's an idiot and everything under the sun. And then there's other people that are, oh, you did great on this part. You did great on this part. Maybe we'll tweak this part a little bit. I think you made a great point about not taking it personally and learning to separate the work from yourself. And the truth is too, even the best copywriters in the world, write stuff that doesn't work or stuff that's not great. I know it's actually really hard to believe for a lot of people, but Stefan writes stuff all the time that doesn't work. Craig Clemens writes stuff all the time that doesn't work. I mean, you give it your best shot. And obviously as you get better, you get more wins versus losses. But the reality is, it doesn't matter how damn good you are, you're never going to be perfect.
Right.
So, I mean, truly kind of understanding that. And then the major businesses in our niche all understand that. They understand if they hire even the best, there's a 60 to 70% chance they write something great, but there's also a 30% chance that they write a bomb and it doesn't do shit.
Right. And I mean, so my mom was always there were professors in college that you got A's the first paper you wrote because you understood how they thought, you understood what they wanted. And then there were professors that you'd get a C the first time. And then once you got their feedback, you're going to get A's. Your client either knows or think they know their customer better than you do. They've been selling to them for a longer time than you have. And so it's a matter of, most of the time, if something's not going to work, it's because they understand their customer better than you do already. And so it's just getting to that understanding. And that's where the big separation comes in because, I mean, like I said, research and reading forums is my favorite thing, but there's still that fine line between understanding, really being in the customer's shoes and knowing what's worked. And I think that's one of my first questions now in every discovery call with a new client is there anything that has not worked for you? Because just avoid that altogether, because you never know, it could be something that's in forums, but they've tried it and it just hasn't killed it.
That's a really smart point. I want to point out for all the copywriters listening. A lot of smart copywriters will ask, can you give me what's worked in the past, which is great because you want to know what the people bought from in the past. But it's even better if you can get what worked and what didn't work. Because if you can see, here's 6 different leads we tried and these did not work. Okay, well, they tried this immunity lead and the immunity doesn't work. but they did a story lead twice and the story leads worked 2 times. Okay, that's enough information for me to realize, okay, I should go in this direction instead of this direction. That's a really, really big point for copywriters.
Yeah, I've been writing for collagen for the last couple of months, a collagen product, and I read through a solid amount of testimonials, and I would say 75% of their testimonials talk about like hair and nail growth. They've never written a hair growth like email that has killed it. Like everybody wants to talk about bone on bone pain and joint pain and all of this stuff. And even though in the results they talk about hair, it's just not what works. So that would definitely be something that was a surprise, because when you read about it, everybody talks about it, but it's not what people are looking for when they buy collagen. They're like surprised by it. They're like, oh, great. Like, cool. My hair's stronger and longer.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's more of a secondary benefit. So it's like they're coming in because they have knee pain and getting up and down the stairs is a pain in the ass every day. But they start taking it, then yeah, like, oh, my hair is better, my skin looks better. So yeah, it's not the pain point that drives them to buy it in the first place, but it is something you could probably talk about as secondary benefits, which would make them happy, especially if you're selling to women. That's to guys. It's not guys don't really care about that shit, but
not so much. And I learned that too. Like I have written for hair loss supplements for men, and I mean there are guys that. Well, this is not the best place to say that, but there are guys that just shave their head and they're like, oh, fine, I'll just be the bald guy. And then there are guys that are not comfortable with that, and it's just all about knowing the customers that you're.
It's actually, so I remember when I was actually losing my hair. This was like 5-6 years ago, or I was losing it for a while. Then 5-6 years ago is when I actually shaved it. And I was explaining this to a female friend of mine, what it's like to lose your hair as a guy. I was like, your whole like everything that's running through your head is just fucking nightmare scenarios. You're like, I'm gonna look like a fucking idiot. I'm gonna be embarrassed when I go out. I'm never gonna get laid again. Like everything that could possibly go wrong is running through your head. And it's kind of like, it's very similar to like if a woman just gained like 20 pounds out of nowhere. Like she would be super insecure and super like anxious about what's going on and trying to figure out, and very just kind of, yeah, you'd be very insecure about going out and what you looked like and what a certain dress looked like on you. And guys are very much the same way when they lose their hair. It's interesting, but you definitely make a good point. Like in that moment when I was losing it, you probably could have sold me on something to try to fix it. Now I don't give a shit. I mean, I've realized I haven't had hair for 5 years, and now I don't care, and it doesn't make one difference in my life. So
right. And I read that on forums, though. I wouldn't try to sell you on it. I'd try to sell the guys that haven't shaved their head yet but are thinking about it, because it's that bleeding neck problem. Like at this point, it's not a bleeding neck problem to you. You're like, yeah, I'm the bald guy. Like, look at I look great. Who cares? Like, but there are people that just haven't gotten to that point yet, and that's where you have to find the people that are at that point and not the women that have gained 20 pounds, they're at that point. That's where you want to sell them on certain things. But yeah, it's just finding them where they are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really great point. Like people, when they buy stuff, it's usually, you called it a bleeding neck problem, which I think is a great phrase for that. I know Stefan uses that all the time. People want to get out of the pain that they're in much more than they want to get kind of the result that you're kind of promising. It's like someone who, so like, let's say if I was trying to sell, back when you were a server and I was trying to sell you something on becoming a copywriter, I would actually spend 80% of the time talking about maybe your boss that's a pain in the ass, or that you have to drive 40 minutes to work, or that people at work don't respect you and they're terrible to put up with. Because that's the stuff you're feeling every single day, and that's what you're feeling right now. And the reality is you want to get out of that way more than you want like to be a copywriter.
Yep. Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, mine was like, I was just tired of being at the mercy of people. As a server, like I knew I was doing my job well, but it doesn't matter to the table that's sitting there if you're doing your job well or not. They're people that come in are either going to tip like 5% or 30% the second they walk in the door. It's statistically proven. Like you really can't do a whole lot to affect that. And I got tired of that. And I have like, I want to move back up to Pennsylvania with my family. I have 2 dogs that are getting older that like, if I have to take them to the ER, I don't want to have to look at my bank account before I'm like, yeah, sure, go do the surgery. Like those are my problems. And when like copywriting came up and I was like, I could be in that point just by sitting at home on my computer and doing what I love to do. Like, yeah, like let's do it. And it wasn't that easy. I've coached like 3 people through some of the beginning stages of it. And I tell them all, I'm like, I'm not going to tell you it's easier that you're going to get to these results the same way I did. I was like, but here are the resources I used. Here's how hard I worked to do it. Here's 80 emails and 80 like samples that will never see the light of day, that are anywhere from terrible to great. But like, I mean, I wrote like 30 something emails for a manifestation offer, which is something I have no interest in whatsoever. But like, that was what I had to do at the time. And when people say like, write every day, like you just write every day and eventually you're getting paid to do it. Like, that's just kind of how it went. Cause yeah, I wrote paddleboarding blog articles. I wrote those manifestation emails. I mean, everything. Craig, one of the most constructive criticisms I ever got was from Craig Ballantyne. I was applying for a gig for his now fiance, and my application email to them was like a crazy person. Like, but I thought pattern interrupt meant there's no way you're not going to open this email, and that was true. But just opening the email like wasn't enough. My samples were good. Like I'd had them reviewed by people. But it's all about positioning, and it's all about just understanding who you're writing to, who your market is. And like, even as a copywriter, when you're like sending proposals to clients, they are your customer. Like you also have to understand what they already know, what their bleeding neck problem is. Like not what you're selling, but like what they need. And that's, I think a big thing too, I've learned is like selling people what they, I'm going to butcher it now, but like selling people what they need, but making it what they want. Like, cause it's not always the same thing.
It's usually not the same.
Not at all, but you have to frame it. You have to figure out how to frame it so that it is that way.
Right. So one thing I want to hop into, so you've been doing this for, let's say 7-8 months. Like I said, you've had this huge, like kind of hockey stick trajectory so far. Things are going great. You're landing a gig making around 6 figures a year now. What is kind of the next, let's say 6 to 12 months look like for you? What are you kind of planning on doing? Is there a certain focus?
My goal, so I took a really sharp left turn when I came to Austin in February. Freelancing's been killing it for me, and also killing myself. Just really long days. And I'm not afraid of putting in the work, but there's a certain point where you start to sacrifice the quality of your work and the quality of like how much you're learning. I mean, this is a small percentage of the books that I have bought, and I've probably finished about 2 of the books that I have bought since I started. And there's just so many resources out there, and there's so much that I want to learn and get better at. And it's hard to do that when you're constantly looking for clients and constantly trying to keep track of 8 different projects. So the next at least like solid 6 months for me, I am starting an in-house gig May 1st. I got a lot of advice to do that from like Jared Harlan and Ning, all in Austin when I was there in February. Just if you get the opportunity to go in-house and make, decent income goals, like you'd be crazy not to, because I'm still pretty early on in the game. And while I've learned fast, I think Scott Phillips, like people have also said, like there's a fast way to 10K and there's a fast way to 25K a month. And in-house is just one of the easier ways to learn enough to get to 25K a month without like just dying. Cause I mean, it's been a struggle the last couple of months. I won't lie. Like I've made some pretty close calls on deadlines and quality of work. And like my integrity suffers with that too, because, if I'm like, this will be done by Tuesday, and Tuesday at 8 p.m., I'm like, my brain is fried. Like, there's just no way this is going to be done today.
Yeah.
Like it chips away at you inside, and you lose that confidence and you lose that chance to do it well. And every project when you're starting out needs to be done well, because that's just how it is. So the next 6 months for me are definitely really focusing in on this in-house gig. I'll be writing a lot of emails and kind of like short form landing pages, advertorials, which are all my favorite things to write. And just getting as much feedback as possible to make sure I get those types of copy just down really strong. I definitely haven't niched down at all until this. I've written for, like I said, like every niche, and I'm really excited to nail down. I'll be working with mostly health and supplement products, which I've really enjoyed. So, and I would say like it's changed a lot in my personal life too. Like it's really hard to write about healthy lifestyles without living one yourself. You can do it for a while, but at a certain point you feel kind of like slimy, like like eating cheeseburgers and writing about how you shouldn't be. And so yeah, no, I've just learned a lot personally and professionally in the last couple of months. And I just turned 31 in February. If you had asked me like June of last year where I would be 10 years from now, I would tell you I'm a career bartender server. Like I'm going to be that 60-year-old lady behind the bar that everybody knows, who's like just barely like crawling around behind the bar. And, you know, I mean, it changes so fast, and you just have to be willing to go along for the ride, because it's crazy. It's a crazy ride. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like you've had, I would say, probably one of the quickest success stories we've had in the Copy Accelerator group. So it's pretty amazing to see you going from, and I agree, you doing the in-house gig, I think is probably the best thing you can do. A lot of new copywriters tend to want to avoid that because they want to keep much more of the freedom and they don't want to be on meetings and stuff like that. But the reality is there's a proven path of doing that. And you see it with so many people who are really good now and who are making really good money, who spent a year and a half, 2 years in-house somewhere, and they learned everything. They learned and they saw all the data and they saw all the stuff that works, what doesn't work. They know all the hooks that work. And then they go out on their own and can kind of do whatever the hell they want. And they can make 2 times what they were making in house, but they got the knowledge and they learned what worked and they learned what didn't work.
Right.
And that's the biggest benefit. And the fact that honestly, it would be smart to do it and honestly not get paid for it, just to be able to learn everything. But the fact that you're getting paid 6 figures is
Yeah. It's funny because when I told my family, I was like, yeah, I'm taking a bit of a pay cut from like what I'm making freelancing, but it's still like 2.5 times what I've ever made in a month to do this. And it's so much less, not that it's less stress, because the pressure is definitely there, but like, you know, the customer, like the in-house thing is like 3 months ago when they asked me, I said no. Like I'll stay on a contract basis. And I told them, I was like, I know I'm in the honeymoon of freelancing. I'm not telling you that I'm right and you're wrong by offering me this. I'm very honored that you're offering, but like, I'm in the honeymoon of freelancing. Like I love it 3 months ago. And then this last 3 months has been, the honeymoon is over. Not in a bad way. Like I've been very lucky to I have not had a bad client yet. I'm wood somewhere. Like I've had all very challenging and positive clients up until now, from Scott Phillips all the way through to this in-house gig. Like everybody has been very aware of where I am in my copy journey and very like constructive and willing to like make it a win-win on both sides. So I've had that, but you just do get to a point where you're just like, well, if I made this, I can make this. Well, if I made this, I can make this. Well, if I made this, I can make this. And eventually you just can't do it anymore. Especially when you're learning as you go, because it adds up. The time, everything takes longer than you think it will.
Yes. Yes. Awesome. So one last question that I ask everybody who I have on. So you've been Copy Accelerator Lite member for 6-7 months now. Somebody's watching this and they've heard a lot about Copy Accelerator or the Lite program. They've thought about doing it. What would you tell them? I'm
like a walking advertisement for Copy Accelerator. Like I tell people who don't know what copywriting is that they should like know what Copy Accelerator Lite is. Just because so again, I come from the service industry. A big part of the service industry for me is your coworkers. I've also been very lucky in the service industry to work with people that I do really enjoy working with. Having that common goal and that common enemy, I guess, is like a big part of it for me. And if I were to have been doing copywriting for this last 6 months without Copy Accelerator Lite, I would not be doing copy anymore. I talk to, I'd say, at least 3 or 4 members of Copy Accelerator Lite every day. There's a lot of like bouncing around ideas, the job board, the mentorship calls. Like what we pay for Copy Accelerator Lite is nothing compared to the value we get out of it. I mean, I almost signed up for a couple of mentorship programs before we added the mentorship calls that were $4,000 to $5,000 a month, and like you get all of that in Copy Accelerator Lite. Like the community, the network, the resources. It's just basically like any question you could ever want answered, the answer's there. And instead of Googling it and finding 4, contrasting opinions, like you just get one and it's worked. Like you're just confident that it's worked for somebody, and there's stats to prove it. There's screenshots, there's comments. Like I think that's been the biggest thing for me, because when I first started and you Google copywriting, it's just limitless. And there's just, I honestly wouldn't say that Copy Accelerator is the only one that is good or the only one that works, but you have to find one that works for you and go with it. Otherwise you're never going to get anywhere, because you're just going to constantly, there's people that sit and learn for months. And I was like, all right, well, I joined in September, like by October, I've got to pay it off. So I got to start doing the thing. And Copy Accelerator makes that really easy to just do the thing. And so yeah, no, I tell anybody that asks what I do, I say I joined a writing mastermind and I do copywriting. Like it's not just copywriting, it's being a part of the mastermind that's really gotten me where I am. So
awesome. So let's wrap this up. Yeah, I just want to say super thanks for coming on. People are going to really love this. I mean, this is an industry that is dominated by 90% men. And the fact that you right out of the gate are kicking ass like this is going to be very inspiring to a lot of women out there. So I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. And I'm super interested to see kind of what the next year looks like for you, because like I said, you've been on this great trajectory. You're a person who is not afraid to put in the work. And yeah, I think you're gonna be a rock star in no time. So it's gonna be cool to see.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's been an honor for sure.